So what happens when we take a Steam Deck, strip away the power, and focus solely on the game streaming experience? Well, we wind up with a device like this, the Logitech G-Cloud. The Logitech G-Cloud came out in 2022 and was marketed as a game streaming handheld, meaning that the real focus of this thing was on features like Steam Link, Xbox Game Pass, NVIDIA GeForce Now. To that end, I'd say it's a very successful device, but does this still represent a good budget gaming option for the budget-conscious consumer? Let's find out in today's episode of Game on a Budget. First off, let's talk about the hardware inside. Now, being that it was marketed primarily as a game streaming device, I wouldn't expect high-end hardware to be in there, and that's pretty much the case. It's rocking a Snapdragon 720G as the processor, and if you're unfamiliar with what that means, the Snapdragon 720G really came out in 2020. This device was released in 2022, so even in 2022, it was already rocking pretty outdated hardware. The G-Cloud's also sporting 4 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of internal storage with the ability to expand storage up to a terabyte if you so choose, and it has about 12 hours of battery life per the manufacturers. I'd say, having played this, I don't usually play for 12 hours straight, but I'll go a couple days without charging it, and it'll keep chugging along just fine, so I'd say that's probably a valid claim. Now, why would you care about expanded storage on a device that's supposed to be all about game streaming? Well, even though it's an underpowered device, it is still capable of some pretty solid emulation, and if you wanted to load some retro titles on here to take advantage of that emulation, you're going to need a lot more than 64 gigabytes. You'll wind up filling that up very quickly. So, if you're interested in emulation, we'll talk more about it later in the video. For now, let's talk about whether or not this thing actually succeeds as a game streaming device. You know, the whole reason it was created and marketed for. Anecdotally speaking, it works great in my house. I've never taken it out of my house, to be honest with you. I haven't needed to. I bought this solely so I could play games in my bed and not have to be in my office all the time to play games, or if my kids were on the TV that the game systems were hooked up to, I could use this to stream my games. Now, here's some of the downsides of this thing. One, it only works with Wi-Fi. So if you were hoping to have a device that you could travel with and have access to your gaming PC, you better hope you're going somewhere with a good Wi-Fi connection, because it does not work with any kind of cellular network. That's kind of a bummer. Kind of means your phone can probably do a better job than this thing can. The other kind of big kicker is that this thing was built with Wi-Fi 5, not Wi-Fi 6. Wi-Fi 6 was out when this thing was released, so it was kind of a head scratcher even at the time that they went with Wi-Fi 5. What the manufacturer claims is that they built a state-of-the-art antenna within here so that you could get a very good signal even on the Wi-Fi 5 connection. I guess their thought was that it would cancel out not being Wi-Fi 6, but given that all other devices these days are built with the Wi-Fi 6 protocol, I just don't know if this is something I could recommend. Now let's talk about the screen here. This is a 7-inch LCD touchscreen, and it is capable of up to 1080p, which is kind of a bummer, but the screen is a good size, and you will be able to see all the details that you want to see. Here's a PS Vita for comparison. You can kind of see how much smaller some of the older handhelds are compared to it. So I'd say it's a pretty decent screen size, but that 1080p resolution is kind of a bummer. Keep in mind, most modern phones are doing 4K at this point, so 1080p is kind of a hit against this thing. It has a 60 hertz refresh rate, which is great. But yeah, that 1080p resolution is kind of limiting, and that's also a little disappointing. But now we got to talk about the big kicker of this guy. Price. The price, to me, just makes this thing a no-go. It's currently $299. It is more expensive than it was this time last year. I actually got this particular one on a deal during Black Friday for about $200. The fact that even at the time it was going for $275 without any deals, which was still a lot, but now it's even more at $299. I don't see the value of this thing when there are cheaper alternatives out there that can kind of do the same stuff that this can do. And even just looking at my collection of things that I have on hand here, this is an Anbernic device. There's a whole bunch of these out there, so if you don't like this kind of Game Boy style, there's other offerings that have similar control schemes to the Logitech G-Cloud here. But yeah, they're very capable game streaming devices and emulators, pretty much capable of whatever the G-Cloud's capable of, and a lot of them go for a lot cheaper than $299. So if you're looking for the budget option, I would say check these out because they're pretty solid. The G-Cloud, you know, if you can get a hold of one for under $200, I saw a couple used ones up on eBay going for $175, a few refurbished ones. I think the value's there if you can get it for that cheap. But brand new out of the box, I just don't see it. And another point I want to make about the $299 price point is for $399, you can get yourself the LCD version of the Steam Deck. That's wild to me. $100 more, and you can get a device that is significantly more powerful than this and can actually do standalone kind of PC gaming. So I just, again, reiterate that I don't see the value here for this device. Interestingly enough, Logitech's working on the G-Cloud too, so I'm curious how that's going to wind up pricing out. Because again, like if all they're really doing is releasing another game streaming Android device, I'm not really sure what they're doing because they already have the G-Cloud. They'd probably be better served trying to get the price for this down to under $200 if they really want to be competitive. But let's talk about the most important feature of the G-Cloud, being the game streaming, the whole thing it was built for and marketed towards. I've got my G-Cloud hooked up to a dock here that's running to a TV and also running to a video capture device, so you'll be able to see everything I do without me having to do this kind of awkward camera thing. The glare also sucks in here too, so this will be better. As you saw, one of the positives of this device is that you can dock it to a TV. So if you want to play your PC games but don't always want to be holding a thing, staring at a small screen, the ability to dock it to a bigger TV, hook up a controller to it, and be able to access your PC titles from a different room than your computer is a pretty nice feature. Now keep in mind, the dock itself doesn't actually come with the G-Cloud. You'll have to go out and get a third-party one, which I did here. They're not that expensive these days, and as long as you have a good Wi-Fi connection in your home, you shouldn't have an issue with reception or anything like that. There are also docks out there that will allow you to direct hook up an Ethernet cable if you want a more stable connection. I have not tested any of those, so I can't speak to how well they work. Real quick, we'll talk about the UI here. This top row here are applications that you've accessed recently. It kind of works, but it gets clunky really quick, especially if you open a bunch of games, like say on Xbox Cloud Gaming that you just wanted to check out. This gets filled up with a whole bunch of things that you're probably not that interested pretty quick. You can fix that pretty quickly by utilizing the My Favorites here and just setting the applications you actually care about down here. I have all my emulators lined up and my game streaming services. Out of the box, Logitech G-Cloud comes with NVIDIA GeForce Now. I prefer Steam Link just because I use Steam for everything, so I'd rather just use it. Because it's an Android device, through the Play Store, you can just download it just like you could on any Android device. So we'll go ahead and launch Steam Link. And you can see here, this is the screen you get dropped into. You can see that it recognizes my controller right away, which is great. If we go into the settings here, we can check out the streaming. So here is kind of the downside, like I said, of the G-Cloud. It's only capable of enhanced 1080p. So if you're on a 4K screen, you're going to notice that lack of resolution, that lack of clarity. The current screen I have it on, I think, maxes out at 1080p, so it's not a big deal for me. But you will notice it on a large TV screen. Let's go ahead and launch it and get connected. Steam is just a nice interface in general. It's very consoleized, so it goes right into big picture mode here so that you can jump right in. And we'll go ahead and jump right into Halo here and check it out. All right. As you can see here, I'm not quite sure what's going on with the DualSense controller, but it is just completely losing its mind here. Bit strange. So I'm going to switch controllers here, and we'll come back to this. All right, I swapped controllers here, booted back into Steam, see if that makes a difference. Maybe the DualSense just isn't playing well with the Logitech G-Cloud. I'm not sure. I will say that I've had other problems getting Bluetooth connections with controllers on this thing. One problem I had in particular was actually this 8BitDo Ultimate Wireless controller. No matter what I did, I could not get it to sync up with the Logitech G-Cloud and actually work. I'm unsure what the issue was there. I've had other controllers that have similar compatibility issues. This, oddly enough, is the most reliable controller that I've used. It's called the Bytong KP40. This and like general Xbox controllers seem to work very well with the G-Cloud. Anything else seems to struggle, and I'm not sure why. But let's go ahead and boot back into the Halo Master Chief Collection, and we'll check it out. We'll see what kind of image we get and what kind of latency we see. When you first boot into the game, you'll probably notice that it's almost in a widescreen. There's two black bars, one at the top, one at the bottom, and it's the same on the device as it is on the screen I'm looking at right now. And you may be wondering what's going on. We don't want that. We want to take full advantage of the screen real estate because the G-Cloud has a pretty decent sized screen. I don't want, part of it blacked out. What's happening is that the resolution of the PC that it's streaming from is capable of much higher resolutions than what the G-Cloud is. So what we have to do is go into the settings, go into the video settings, go to the resolution settings, and set it to what the G-Cloud is actually capable of, 1920 by 1080p, and that should solve any of these issues. So if you save that, you'll see that the screen now goes to a full-size screen, which is perfect. That's what I want. And again, it looks very crisp on the G-Cloud itself, but if you were to be playing this on a 4K TV, you're going to notice things kind of look a little bit blurrier. They kind of look a little less clear. It's not as crisp. That's because, 1080p on a 4K screen just isn't going to look as good. And the fact that, again, we're only capped at 1080p is kind of a bummer, but if you have a screen that, it maxes out around 1080p, like a TV or something like that, it'll look gorgeous. No problems there. Now, I expect it to be able to do PC gaming pretty effectively. You can tell here I'm not having any real input delays, lag, anything like that. It's responding how I would want it to. I'm about to get destroyed by these grunts because I wasn't paying attention. But no problems there. I expected my PC streaming to work well. That was the whole point of this device. Let's do something a little bit more demanding like Xbox Cloud Gaming. Real quick, one thing that I will say is kind of irritating about this is that the ability to go back to the home menu doesn't actually automatically map to any controller you sync up. At least this controller. That's kind of annoying, meaning you have to get up, go to the dock, hit the home button to be able to get back to the menu to then be able to navigate with the controller. Just something to keep in mind as we're going through critiques. But let's go ahead and take a look at some Xbox Cloud streaming games out there. In order to take advantage of this, you do have to have Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which is now $30 a month, I believe. So keep that in mind that this is not a free service. Let's go ahead and jump into Halo 5. Why not? We'll stick on the theme of Halo here. So let's check out the performance here with the Logitech G-Cloud. It takes a couple seconds, probably about 30 to 60 seconds to actually boot into the game. So keep that in mind. Cloud gaming is great as long as you're on a really, really solid internet connection. If you do not have a solid internet connection, getting Game Pass just for cloud gaming would be a huge waste of money for yourself. So keep that in mind. I have not played Halo 5 in years. This was my least favorite Halo title, like by a large margin. Now I'm noticing my capture device is lagging significantly compared to what we're actually seeing here. So let me go ahead and just turn the camera here towards the screen a bit, just so that you can see that, the game itself, what I'm looking at, isn't lagging as much as what the capture device is. I said in my last video that I need to get a better capture device, but just to reiterate the point, I'm actually getting really, really solid gameplay through cloud gaming using the Logitech G-Cloud. So I can't dock any points on it for cloud gaming. It's doing exactly what it should be doing. Again, it's a device that costs $299 and is supposed to be like the game streaming device. So it should be doing this well. Let's go ahead and do one more streaming service that hopefully some of you may want to take advantage. Finally, let's talk about PlayStation. Most of you are probably thinking PS Remote Play. Now, only until recently, the PS Remote Play app actually didn't work on the Logitech G-Cloud because basically you're required to have an official controller for the PS Remote Play app to work. Now, Logitech introduced these experimental settings down here in the labs where you could enable key mappings. These key mappings allow you to basically emulate some of the DualSense 5 controllers functionalities that you wouldn't get out of a typical controller like this, utilizing the Logitech's touchscreen and things like that. That kind of represents a problem here because if you have this docked, like I do, then you're not going to be able to get up and go press the little touchscreen every time you need to do something. So for games that really rely on that DualSense controller, that functionality, this may not represent the best solution. And I have to be honest, in trying to set it up, I just continue getting different errors and different issues. I'm going to try and sign in again here, but I keep getting an error every time I try. We'll see. Now that I'm actually filming it, it's going to give me something else. So I'll go ahead and put my information in here, and we'll see if we can get it running because I have those key mappings set on here, so I'm curious if this will actually work. And here we go. I'm trying to sign in. I have the key mappings enabled, and that's what happens. It just kind of crashes out and sends you back to the menu. At least that's been my experience with it. I've read online that it should be working as of 2025, but I mean, as you can see, it's just not working for me right now. But that's okay. For PlayStation, I utilized another service called PX Play, which is basically a third-party app that gives you all the functionality, lets you map whatever controller you want, and you can connect to your PS5 no problem. I'm connecting to mine right now, doing the local connect. I think remote connect is if you weren't in your home on the same internet connection, but because I'm on the same connection, it just beeped on my PS5 right back there. And there we go. We're now connecting to it, and you can see I have access to my PS5 menu here, and the gameplay is solid. Now, because you map some of the DualSense functionality to maybe some double button presses or things like that, there are some things that just don't really work very well through this third-party application. So like games that are really, really heavy on the DualSense functionalities like Astrobot aren't ideal for this kind of remote setting. But games like, you know, this goofy little game I play with my daughter, Human Fall Flat, they're perfect for it because you don't actually need all those features. You can just have some fun with it. So I will say that PS Remote Play, or I should say remote playing your PS5, works on the Logitech G-Cloud. The official app, to me, has some question marks, but there is a third-party solution if you needed a streaming device that could do this for you. All right, now I've taken it off the dock here because dealing with all the emulators we're going to look at is going to be very annoying to navigate with the controller, and I'd rather just be able to use the built-in gamepad to do it and the touchscreen because there's all these little settings and stuff that you got to deal with, so we're going to be doing the rest of the video like this. So let's talk emulation. I mentioned earlier this thing has a Snapdragon 720G processor in it, which isn't that great. Remember, it came out in 2020, so it's nowhere near top of the line, and I'm just going to outright tell you that if you wanted to play GameCube or PS2 on this thing, you probably should look elsewhere because it's not a very capable emulator for those consoles. It's very hit or miss. It's going to be game to game, and it's going to require a lot of tweaking to get individual games to work. My opinion, not really worth it. If it can't do it easily, I just check it off that it doesn't really work very well for GameCube. I tried it with Super Mario Sunshine, Mario Kart, and Sly Cooper to test out, and it was just disappointing, like 15 frames per second the whole time. But if PSP or Dreamcast are as high as you really want to get, you can get some pretty good results on this thing. So this is going to be God of War Ghost of Sparta running through PPSSPP. We'll go ahead and set the rendering resolution to 2x PSP and see what we get. We should get very good results at that resolution. One thing I like about emulation is the ability to fast forward through all this stuff. So if we want to start a new game and you want to skip all those annoying opening cutscenes, all you got to do is fast forward it, which is pretty nice. Now here at 2x PSP resolution, we're getting pretty good results. You're seeing that 60 frames per second hold steady, which is exactly what we were hoping for. It's going to be a smooth experience. God of War Ghost of Sparta is one of, if not the most demanding PSP game out there. So if it can handle this one just fine, it should be okay tackling pretty much the entire library. Now, just for funsies, I want to see how well it can handle the native resolution of this device, 1080p. We're going to enable frame skipping as well. God, I never know what number I'm supposed to pick with this thing. 2 seems fun. We could just do auto frame skip probably. Okay, let's see what we get here because I'll be curious how this looks. And you see the frame rate takes a pretty deep start dive there. We're now getting about between 30 and 45 frames per second. Honestly, still playable. So if you wanted to play some PSP games at 1080p, it does look like you can get some results if you enable frame skipping. Is it as smooth as 60 FPS? No, but you know, the PSP wasn't getting 60 FPS, so it's pretty good for what it is. Let's go ahead and show off some N64 emulation here with Mupen 64 Plus. I'm going to go ahead and run Perfect Dark at what should be the highest resolution this device is capable of. Now, if you don't have the premium version of this, you'll get a little delay every time you try and open a game. If you want to support the developers, you probably should. I should. And here we go. We've got the game. It's looking gorgeous, actually. It's full 1080p, which is what I was hoping for. It's also got scanline shaders over it, which in my opinion, these things always look better when you put scanline shaders over them. Not everybody is a big fan of them, but I think it really smooths out a lot of the edges, especially on these older games, because these older games are meant to run on CRT TVs that had scan lines and all that. So in my opinion, they're a necessary thing, but not everybody agrees with me on that. Now, if you don't feel like dealing with all these individual emulators and all the little settings and problems that might come up with that, you can utilize something like RetroArch, which does allow you to download cores, and those cores handle the emulation. RetroArch is it's an all-in-one emulator where you can set playlists based on the individual games that you have loaded onto your device. It's fine. It requires a lot of tweaking, and it's not the most intuitive thing out there, but I have another suggestion for you if you really want to take the UI to the next level. You should look into this application here called Show. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly, by the way, so apologies if I'm not. And really all this is a front end. It's not the only front end out there available, but it's just a nice, easy to use, easy to navigate UI that can let you basically navigate to your game console, select the game you want to play, and then it'll launch the applicable emulator for you, so you don't have to deal with going into each of the programs, knowing what program you got to go into. It's about as simple as you can get. So for example, the Game Boy Advanced here, if I were to go into the settings, you basically go down here and you select the emulator that you want it to launch from. So in this case, it's going to use RetroArch NGBA. Make sure you have the right one set, because if it's not on here, the game actually won't launch. So in this case, we'll go ahead and test out Metroid Zero Mission. And what should happen is RetroArch should launch in the background, and then we should be able to play the game, just like that. It's just nice and convenient as opposed to navigating each of these emulators individually. Now, I do want to talk about something that's irritating me. Probably won't apply to most people because most people don't care that much about the Sega Saturn, but Sega Saturn games I just cannot get to launch on this thing. And it's annoying because I spent $4.99 for the Pro version of Yaba Sanshiro here. Basically what happens is I try to go in and launch a game and everything just winds up crashing. In fact, Yaba Sanshiro isn't even noticing the games. It just sticks me in this update screen forever, basically, and I've let it run for like 2 hours, and it still just updates. So there's clearly a problem with the app. I probably need to uninstall it and try again, but I've tried a couple different things. I've also tried running them through RetroArch, and, you know, we can show actually what happens here when I try to load a game. Any game in here, really doesn't matter what one. Blazing Dragon, sure. If we go ahead and run it and we select either of these cores, we'll just try the Yaba Sanshiro, it'll basically just fail, and I don't know why. We even try the Beetle. Yep. So no matter what, Sega Saturn keeps failing. It could be the file type I have in here because I have it in bin and Q file format. Maybe it's supposed to be in .chd format. I don't know, but either way, it's irritating me. It's a lot more difficult to deal with than the other emulators on here. Just something I thought I would mention. Last thing we should talk about, but I'll keep it pretty brief, is standalone gaming. So not using any cloud services, not talking emulation here, stuff you can get on the Google Play Store. You're pretty much going to be limited to kind of casual games that don't require, you know, a beefy device to be able to power, like Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever. So don't expect a lot out of this device. It's going to be fine if you got kids that want to play Minecraft or Fortnite or like really casual gaming. But, you know, like I said, this isn't a Steam Deck. It's not going to be able to perform like a Steam Deck. It isn't even like a high-end handheld here. And that's really it with the G-Cloud. The best I can say about it is that it's fine. It's serviceable. It does what it was marketed to do. But for $299, in my opinion, fine isn't good enough. It should be a higher-end device for that price tag because there are higher-end devices available for cheaper. You can get a Retroid Pocket 6 for, I think, $230 at the time of this video that has a more powerful processor and is capable of doing more things. And you can go the opposite direction for $100 more and get yourself the LCD version of the Steam Deck, which is going to be able to do way more than any of those devices. So I just don't really see where this device fits. I can't recommend it as a budget handheld. I'd recommend the Retroid Pocket or any of those Anbernic devices that are out there. They're able to do everything this guy can do, and they usually come in significantly cheaper. So is a G-Cloud worth having in 2025? Not for $299. If you can score a refurbished one for under $200, maybe $175, I'd say the value proposition might be there. But even then, there are other comparable devices out there for a little bit over $200 that can do everything this can do and do it a little bit better. Let me know in the comments if there's other devices out there you'd like me to take a look at. But for now, keep pinching pennies. We're going to game on a budget.